Welcome to BlackUSA.news morning show. I'm your host, William Honolulu Jr. Join us as we explore the news and opinions that impact our community. We break down how the major stories have a very personal, local, and racial impact. No topic is off limits, but even if the conversation gets rough, we're always going to keep it real. Greetings and salutations, my friends out there in internet land. I am William Honolulu Jr., and I have the privilege and honor of serving as the host of the morning show. Welcome, 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 welcome. Good morning to you. Yesterday's episode was about gun violence. That was our kind of first foray into that. Like I said yesterday, it's been a topic that has hit me differently. And reflect on it before I just kind of opened up and just started talking. Even though I thought I was prepared yesterday, it hit different. It really did. It was more emotionally draining than I thought it was going to be. I thought, be able to have a great intellectual conversation about gun violence and about gun laws and things like that, and it just didn't happen that way because this is personal. And as I started doing more research, I started realizing how much more personal firearm violence is. I got initially engaged this time around by the coverage and the detail about what happened in Buffalo at Bob's grocery store when the guy drove 3 hours to get to the surveilled before so that he could murder people just because they were Black, because people were being replaced, and he didn't like that. That scared the bejesus. And what it did is that it spoke to some of my biases. It spoke to the fact that, what I've seen and what I learned suggests that just for the color of my skin, I could be a target. And that was difficult to process. Not that it hasn't been a reality, but every time that happens, every time that story gets told, it reinforces the vulnerability. And to be honest, that is not what's up. So today we're going to continue down the rabbit hole of talking about fighting violence. And part of this is that I want to give you my perspective and how I'm working through it. Because a lot of times we think it's just us. We're out here by ourselves, nobody understands, and I feel that way too. And I'm hoping that maybe together, that if we can't figure out an answer to address this right now, we can support each other in a way that helps us all get better. But before we get into all of the rest get into the main part of the show, just want to say a big shout out to my team. Big up to Kyle, Crazy Horse Morgan, for all he does, and Brandy Raymar for all that she does, for making sure that we have quality information and giving the appropriate show notes that I think I have grown from. So yeah, really big up to them, and also really shout out to my personal assistant, Grace Awaka. I am really grateful for the support from my team. Let's see, what else? Oh, before, we can't go on without talking about Breadcoin. I'm grateful that BlackUSA.news has this amazing partnership with Breadcoin. Breadcoin is a 501c3 organization that provides an alternate payment system for people to purchase food from participating vendors. And it's like, well, okay, why is that a big deal? Because not only can you purchase coins so that you can purchase, so that you can get food, Breadcoin utilizes their system, their network with community resources and community advocates and people who know individuals who are dealing with food or nutrition issues, or who are homeless or unstably housed. And they're able to distribute these coins, which have a value of $2.50 the last time I checked. And people can take these coins and they can go into a restaurant and they can eat and they can sit there with dignity. Not only does Breadcoin do that, Breadcoin also does a lot of community engagement. They do a lot of work with organizations and with community associations that are trying to address food insecurity in their areas, and also those who are really just trying to develop a tighter, more close-knit communities. They have even what they call the pop-up linen table, where they bring these wonderful tables out and they feed the community. And so that's a wonderful, wonderful organization. Take a look at them, breadcoin.org. It is wonderful, and we're looking forward to doing great things with them. Also want to give a big shout out to Darker Than Blue Grill. Darker Than Blue Grill is located on 413 North Charles Street. They have been serving the community and serving the community great food for quite a while. And this isn't the first time as a restaurant, the staff and the ownership there have delighted our taste buds for over a decade. And so I am grateful that I get to eat at Darker Than Blue Grill. It is amazing. And if you're in Baltimore, make sure you stop by and check them out. Or you could just look them up online at darkerthanbluegrill.com. Also want to tell you about our Maryland election coverage. Today at 2:00, I believe, today at 2:00, Richard Deshay, the Prince George's Perspective, a repeat of that show comes on, and there are a number of candidates who are featured in there. Richard Deshay Elliott, the host, is also a candidate. I believe Belinda Queen was there from Prince George's County District 6. And Ian Miller, I think from Prince George's County as well. And also, I can't remember the last person who was there. Daggone it, I was close. But make sure you catch that out at 2 p.m. today. Also at 5 p.m. today, we will re-air Donnie Glover's interview with Wes Moore. And again, if you miss it at 2 and at 5, you can always catch it on our social media platforms and on our on BlackUSA.news. All right. So what else? Who else? Because I need to make sure I check my show notes because I don't want no trouble. Oh, you know what? I'm about to forget to tell you my company. Hi, my name is William Honolulu Jr., and I'm the host of the Black USA News Morning Show and the president of the Grinding Gang Incorporated. The Grinding Gang is an organization that helps small business owners in the nonprofit and for-profit communities figure out how to make sense of all the noise. There's a lot of information out there, and sometimes it gets a little overwhelming. We help you develop business plans. We help you figure out what to do with a lot of the information you receive. And we also help you figure out how to become more profitable. We also host a variety of workshops. You can check out our next workshop on grant writing right here. All right, so that's a little bit about what I do. We're gonna come to you, I think, next week, and we're gonna talk to Jennifer Hubbard and talk a little bit more about how the grinding and how we can help you in your business. All right, let's get started talking about gun violence. One of the things I realized yesterday, we didn't actually talk about the Second Amendment directly. So let's put up the text of the Second Amendment. This is it. A well-regulated for the security of a free state, the right people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's it. All of the things that allow gun ownership, that to these murders that have led to the proliferation of firearms in our community, are all based on that sentence. That's it. I've seen a couple of comedians and commentators who talk to gun rights advocates, and the funny part is that the gun rights advocates can't explain the Second Amendment. Well, what did it say? What's the answer? And I'm not saying that because it's not. There are many people who listen to things and and so what we're in, but this is the big thing: a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's simple. And also part of it says the well-regulated, it talks about a well-regulated militia. And that has been bastardized and turned into this: everybody needs a gun. It's okay to have a gun for our protection. But interestingly, let's look at what one of the justices had to say about it. One a little older, but I think on.
I were writing the Bill of Rights now, there wouldn't be any such thing as the Second Amendment,
which says
that a well-regulated militia being necessary for the defense of the state, the people's rights to bear arms. This has been the subject of one of the greatest pieces of fraud, I repeat the word fraud, on the American public by special interest groups that I have ever seen in my lifetime. Now just look at those words. There are only 3 lines to that amendment. A well-regulated militia. If the militia, which was going to be the state army, was going to be well-regulated, why shouldn't 16 and 17 and 18 or any other age persons be regulated in the use of arms the way an automobile is regulated?
I think he had a good point. Why wouldn't you regulate a person the same way you would regulate a person with a weapon, the same way you would regulate a person with a gun? The gun can do much more damage. And one of the reasons that it does much more damage is because cars are regulated. So we have the Second Amendment, and this sentence drives gun violence. The sentence that people don't even understand has created tons and tons of law. Now, one of the things that has also come up is that, I'm sorry, because this is a difficult story. After Sandy Hook, there was a lot of push for legislation. Let me actually look for that. Okay, history of gun legislation after Sandy Hook. And remember Sandy Hook, there were 20 kids who were murdered. 20 kids, 20 first graders, 6-year-olds, learning their ABCs. 20 of them were murdered in December of 2012, and they pushed for assault weapons ban, tighten the regulations on assault weapons. Not even ban them, but tighten the regulations on them, limit the capacity of magazines, and tighten background checks. And by April of 2013, all of those bills had failed. From thoughts and prayers in December to we're not actually going to do anything by April. But that wasn't it. In 2014, there was a bill that would have funded states' efforts to keep guns out of the hands of domestic abusers, and a law that would have banned those under temporary restraining order for buying or possessing guns. That seems like it makes sense. If you have a temporary restraining order, which means that there was a judge in a jurisdiction that said you need to stay away from somebody, they wanted to pass a law that says, hey, if that was the case, you probably shouldn't have a gun right now. And in Maryland, we've seen the results of that, where and in 2014, the Republicans stopped that. Also in 2014, the Republican-controlled House at the time stopped the proposal that would have required serial numbers on homemade guns, such as those made with 3D printers, and the bill never even got out of committee. Think about that. If I wanted to grow a marijuana plant in my house, I gotta let everybody know. I might be subject to arrest, but I can 3D print a gun, and that's okay. But no, they didn't want to do that. So let's go and say, because the conservatives, they hate terrorists. Terrorists are their number one enemy. And so in 2015, there was a bill that would have banned people on a federal terrorism watch list from buying a firearm. A bill that would, if you're on a terrorist watch list, you couldn't get a gun, and they said no to that. Let's look again. In 2015 and 2021, Democrats proposed making gun trafficking a federal crime and increase the penalties for those who buy guns for felons and others prohibited from owning them. And none of those proposals passed. They wanted to expand background checks after mass shootings in San Bernardino, California, Pulse nightclub, because that was about hating gays. And then, Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida, that was about hating gays, and San Bernardino, Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida, and San Bernardino, California, a separate shooting. All of the bills failed, and then the Republicans proposed some weaker measures, and those failed too. There was a bill after the 26 people were killed in a church in Sutherland Springs, Texas in 2017. He was able to buy the gun despite a domestic violence conviction. And even the NRA, they backed a little bit of it. And the changes passed Congress as part of a larger spending bill, and it was signed into law by President Trump. Oh, that's right. I do remember that. That did happen. A bill introduced, and so, again, props what props are due, that we got something done in 2017, but it was more to minor improvements to reporting of criminal and mental health records to background check systems. Just made people know who criminals were and further stigmatized people with mental health. But again, it's something. A bill was introduced by the Democrats in 2017 after a mass shooting at a country music festival in Las Vegas. God, I remember that too. It's so, that's one of the challenges with this. It's like each story I remember. Each one I remember. Would it require gun manufacturers to equip their products with available technologies, ensuring that only the proper owner could fire the gun? This would keep children and other family members from firing them, as well as render them useless if stolen. It failed. The Las Vegas shooter used devices known as bump stocks to allow semi-automatic weapons to fire essentially as a fully automatic one. He killed 60 people with semi-automatic rifles equipped with bump stocks. The legislation never passed. Oh, but the Trump administration banned the devices through regulation. I'm sorry, I didn't. Again, props to that. Props to the former president for banning bump stocks through regulation. And multiple attempts have been made to extend the 3-day maximum on federal background checks, after which sales are produced. The gunman who killed 9 members of a Bible study group of a black church in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015 was able to purchase his handgun thanks to the loopholes. None of those bills passed. The guy who murdered the doctor, he picked up a gun on the way to murder the doctor. The 18-year-old at Buffalo at Tops and the 18-year-old at Uvalde, they picked up those assault weapons legally. There's nothing illegal about the way they did it. That's just what happened. And so recently, especially after Uvalde and the incredible failure there, and let's not forget, Uvalde was one that got the attention. But on Tuesday, June 7th, 11 people were injured by handgun fire and 5 were murdered on June 7th. In Philadelphia, I think on June 5th or June 4th. Was it 20 people were shot in Philadelphia on South Street because somebody decided to. So while Uvalde and some of these other places brought it into the national spotlight and maybe had given people the courage to actually do something on the issue now. Hey, Mike, how's it going? From Tampa checking in. Maybe the sensationalism of this would help something get passed. So what happened is that in the House, they put forth this bill. Let me give you the full screen. It is the Protecting Our Kids Act. And again, we want to make sure that we bring facts here. We don't just, a lot of this is my opinion, but I want to make sure you all know what it actually would do. One of the things it would establish, it would create regulations to cover the storage of your firearm in your house. and create penalties if you didn't store your gun appropriately. A lot while we are caught up and talking about the Uvalde, the Buffalo, and these mass shooters who get global, or yeah, in some cases global, or at least regional and national attention. The bigger issue is that 70% of people who are injured or killed with firearms happens with someone they know. Many of them are suicides, many of them are accidents. And so it's while we are able to focus, and the narrative is about these mass shootings, firearm violence or the dangers of firearms, that's a pervasive problem. The ATF bump stock ban that Trump signed into regulation, it would expand that, will build on that, and it would list them under the National Firearms Act, like machine guns. And that means that those aren't available for purchase unless unless you're like giving them to like a military organization or a special organization that has been authorized to have something like that. And so that's a wonderful opportunity to make people safer. And again, all of these, and that's the thing, all of these things, nothing is going to stop bad people from committing crimes. That is one of the things that they say, and that's true. But the magnitude of the crime, the number of people that they're able to help, hurt. I think I was right the first time, that whole Freudian slip. The number of people that are able to hate with this firearm goes down significantly. They're going to build on ATF's regulations on ghost guns, and want ghost guns to be treated like regular guns. And so what ghost guns are, they're kits and they're parts that people receive and they put them together. Some of them, they build them with 3D printers because they're not manufactured through normal channels. And so like large manufacturers, they have certain regulations, they have to put serial numbers and all this kind of stuff on the weapons, and their sales are allegedly controlled. But these ghost guns, by and large, people don't even know when they exist. You can make them at your house, or pick up a kit at one of these gun shows and make it at your house, and now you're dangerous. It would also raise the lawful age to buy a semi-automatic rifle from 18 to 21 years old. It is very frustrating to know that there is a kid out there who can get, or a young person out there. Right. Ghost guns are an incredible problem, especially in the illegal trades. But it is frustrating to know that there's a kid who is not old enough to drink. Hell, the Uvalde shooter wasn't old enough to drink, but could get a semi-automatic weapon. That's a real thing. Couldn't rent a car for real, or couldn't, in some states, couldn't even get a hotel room on their own at 18. And they can get semi-automatic weapons of death. That's where we are. Establish a new federal offense for the import, sale, and manufacture, and transfer and possession, but not the sale of. Enforcing uses of the possession. Oh yeah, it makes basically it makes importing and the use of a lot of the firearms that are not currently regulated. It makes them. It brings them into the fold. And it establishes new federal offenses for gun trafficking and straw purchases. And the cool part about this enhancement is that the property seizure is important, because what it means is that any of these people that are trafficking guns or buying them, you can seize all of their property as the unlawful enterprise, or fruits of the unlawful enterprise. What that does is it takes away a lot of the incentive for people that go like, oh, well, maybe I'll make enough money. It's like, no, they're going to take it all. And also establishes voluntary best practices for safe firearm storage. Michael asks, you can make a ghost gun with a 3D printer. There are certain components and things that you can make with a 3D printer, and you can make yes, a 3D printer. I have heard of a ghost gun being made by a 3D printer. I don't know if it's like full shot, it revolves or whatever. I've not seen it, but I did read an article about ghost guns and them being made by a 3D printer. And so the interesting part is that that's the legislation that is being proposed to Congress. Not only is it being proposed, it passed the House. Now, it passed the House with not very much bipartisan support. I think maybe 5 Republicans crossed the line in order to vote for it. And of those, like 3 or 4 of them were retiring. That whole courage thing we're back to, that's not something that's really really prevalent in a lot of this discussion. I'm looking for another thing that I was reading earlier I wanted to share with you guys. Well, we talked a little bit yesterday. Let me just go ahead on. We talked a little bit yesterday about vicarious trauma. And we talked a little bit about how, you know, even as I'm doing this research and I'm seeing the data and the statistics that tell me that that having a gun doesn't make me safer, I still got to be honest. Part of me wants that fear. Part of me wants to just feel okay about it. And I realize what that is. It is this fear that I have is a natural reflection or a natural response to trauma. Trauma comes a lot of times when the world that we believe that we're going to live in doesn't come to fruition. And I want to put the burger clip back up because I really want you all to listen to what he said, and I want to explain to you why I think the fraud exists.
I'm writing the Bill of Rights now. There wouldn't be any such thing as the Second Amendment,
which says
that a well-regulated militia being necessary for the defense of the state, the people's rights to bear arms. This has been the subject of one of the greatest pieces of fraud, I repeat the word fraud, on the American public by special interest groups that I have ever seen in my lifetime. Now just look at those words. There are only 3 lines to that amendment. A well-regulated militia. If the militia, which was going to be the state army, was going to be well-regulated, why shouldn't 16 and 17 and 18 or any other age persons be regulated in the use of arms the way an automobile is regulated?
Remember that. One of the reasons is, like I said, I talk about my fear and about how that's driving me. And I started thinking, what if it is fear? What if it's not just my fear that makes me want to get a gun, but what if the underlying reason that we have not been able to make any progress on gun violence is fear? And I was like, well, my fear is very individualized. Like mine is based on my experiences. So how is everybody having these similar experiences? But then I remembered the 5 monkeys experiment. And so I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the 5 monkeys experiment. There 5 monkeys were placed in a cage as a part of an experiment. In the middle of the cage was a ladder with the bananas at the top rung. Every time a monkey tried to climb the ladder, the experimenter sprayed all of the monkeys with icy water. Eventually, each time a monkey started to climb the ladder, the other ones would pull him off and beat him up so that they could avoid the icy spray. Soon, no monkey dared go up the ladder. The experimenter then substituted one of the monkeys in the cage with a new monkey. The first thing the new monkey did was to try to climb the ladder and reach the bananas. After several beatings, the new monkey learned the social norm. He never knew why the other monkeys wouldn't let him go for the bananas because he had never been sprayed with icy water, but he quickly learned that his behavior would not be tolerated by the other monkeys. One by one, each of the monkeys in the cage was substituted for a new monkey until none of the original group remained. Every time a new monkey went up the ladder, the rest of the group pulled him off, even those who had never been sprayed by the icy water. By the end of the experiment, the 5 monkeys in the cage had learned to follow the rules, don't go for the bananas, without any of them knowing the reason why, because they'll get sprayed with icy water. None of them had been sprayed with icy water. None of the monkeys by the end of the experiment had been sprayed with icy water, but none of them dared go to the top of the ladder to get the bananas that were there. The threat had gone, but the imagined threat, whatever it was that kept them from going up and getting the bananas, that still was pervasive. I think that a lot of the people who are opponents of gun regulation, a lot of them are dealing with some fears intergenerationally. It may have made sense back in, the 1700s, especially after the Civil War and after all this. It may have made sense because of the way that the government behaved and the lack of controls and the lack of information. It may make sense because these local, hell, and what was it? In North Carolina, the only coup on American soil, where where there was a mixed group of people who took over a community who won elections, a group of white people came and just took over the roles. Now, when living in a space like that, absolutely, I could see the need for weapons. But I think what is happening is that some of this stuff has just been taught intergenerationally. That a lot of people are just dealing with the fact that they are the next generation of monkeys. That they want their guns because their guns keep them from being afraid. And honestly, why wouldn't they be afraid? Um, if you listen to the news that they receive, there are migrants who are coming to invade your community. MS-13 is coming to rape and kill and pillage. Mexico sends its murderers. That's what they hear. They hear China is coming to take our jobs, and they hear that everything is being outsourced. They hear all of these things. What else do they hear? Jews are controlling their money and making it hard for them to get jobs. And the black sexual predators want all of the white women. And they are going to be in the minority, and their women aren't having babies, they're having abortions. Like, they are scared because of the other part of it too, just underlying. Again, back to fear. If you behaved the way that the predominant gun culture, let's just say the gun culture at this point, if your ancestors had behaved the way that they did to you when you had an opportunity, why wouldn't you get revenge? When you start seeing that the only way you hold on to power, that the only way that you don't get caught out there is by having your gun. Makes you feel safe. Doesn't matter if it's just as safe as when a burglar breaks in and you jump under the covers. Makes you a bigger target. You don't know what's going on. Same thing happens with guns. You're more likely to get killed with a gun in your own possession than by a stranger. But it's the fear that drives us. It's the fear that makes us believe that maybe this time it'll be different. Don't get it twisted, that this is a fear response. Wanting a gun is how you cope with trauma. This is, well, one of the ways. They are afraid. And actually, there's some research that supports that in a really big way. This is from from Palgrave Communications, it looks like. It's an article called "The Psychology of Guns: Risk, Fear, and Motivated Reasoning." And they talk about how there's a shared culture of fear. And it makes you, it forces you to reflect back to their locus of control. They feel everything that they've ever worked for slipping away. They're getting replaced. That is the language that they're using. That there are some Jews who are coordinating with Black folks and Mexicans, funded by Chinese, to take over. That as Democrats or as whatever you are, you're out to get their kids. You're a pedophile. Like, all of these words, because they're afraid. That doesn't make it right, but I think it helps us understand the limitations, and it bears out when you think about the stupidity of the explanations on why they're afraid. They talk about being or why they need guns. One of them said that he used people in his area use AR-15s to hunt prairie dogs, and another one to say to hunt wild boar. Wow. but also they're used to hunt children. So is the opportunity to hunt wild boar or to shoot prairie dogs on your farm or on your property, is that worth the life of some children? Because again, person had maybe not an AR-15, a couple of kids may have gotten killed. But I'm comfortable that I can't even say there wouldn't be as many because I've. So, what can we do? There are a lot of programs that have demonstrated some work that have been studied by the CDC and NIH. And a couple of them, actually, there are three of them that are out in an article from, what year is this? 2016. It says preventing violence among high-risk youth in communities with economic policy and structural strategies. And so they looked at three jurisdictions: Los Angeles, California; Richmond, Virginia; and Baltimore, Maryland, and three different interventions in those three areas. So in Los Angeles, they looked at the business improvement district. And what that is that the businesses in a particular area, their tax money, or they get a special assessment that really goes to the planning, security, and investment in that particular footprint. What it also does is it makes community members and business owners greater community partners. And so that it increases the likelihood of investment. And according to their results, it reduced crime. So the evaluation indicate that the implementation of business improvement districts was associated with a substantial reductions in violence. Evidence from police reports indicate that the business improvement districts in Los Angeles were associated with a 12% reduction in robberies and an 8% reduction in overall crime. You improve the community and crime goes down. That's interesting. And some people will say, well, that's only 8%, that's only 12%. Well, if there are 100 robberies, that's 12 of them that didn't happen. 12 less victims. I'm comfortable there were a lot more than 100 robberies. And so this gives us an opportunity to see something that works. One of the other things was alcohol policy in Richmond, Virginia. They found out that alcohol was a very significant, there was a high correlation between alcohol usage and the violence that they were seeing in the community. They placed license restrictions in 5 census tracts with 18 stores. And it only did it for 18 months, and they found intervention communities increased to 11.4. I'm sorry, give me a second. I've read this wrong before. I'm sorry, I did read this wrong. During the 18 months after the policy was ended, the rate in the intervention communities increased to 11.4 per 1,000 population, while the rate in comparison communities, 2.5 per 1,000 population, was not statistically different from the baseline. Let me tell you what the baseline was for the alcohol policy. I'm sorry. The evaluation found that evaluation findings indicated that the monthly average of ambulance pickups for violent injuries among youth had significantly decreased because of the intervention. That was the positive part of the intervention. I'm sorry. I got to be honest, I was focusing primarily on the intervention that happened in Baltimore because it's Baltimore Safe Streets. That's an outreach program that we have here, and it mobilizes people. And you've seen some of our Safe Street partners in the Ceasefire 365 group that they have, and Baltimore Ceasefire has been very successful. It was implemented in 2008. Yeah, it was implemented then, and it has been incredibly successful. Findings indicate that one of the 4 intervention communities had a 56% reduction in homicide and a 34% reduction in non-fatal shootings. That's one of them. Another one found that there was a decrease of 26 in homicide and 22 for non-fatal shootings. And no change in homicides for another community, but a 34% reduction in non-fatal shootings. And for the third, there was a 44% increase in non-fatal shootings, but it was an increase. I'm sorry, 44% decrease in non-fatal shootings, but a 2.7 times increase in homicides. They estimate that one of the reasons that last group had an increase in actual homicides was because they didn't go through the safe streets long. Oh, absolutely. Baltimore Safe Streets is a national model. And I'm telling you, research directly from, the powers that be, CDC and the United States Department of Health, the United States Department of Health and Human Services, they have evaluated the Baltimore Safe Streets project, and it is wonderful. But it also goes to the fact that it is not just a punitive program. It's not just a program that's out trying to find people who are committing crimes and punish them. What Safe Streets does is, in addition to just being outreach and education, they also connect people to resources. They find out what some of the root causes are in communities, and they help make safer communities, not just safer because of gun violence, but also safer economically. Because let's not get it twisted. The gun just makes you feel safer. A lot of these cats who are carrying guns because of the work that they do, they really feel no different than the police, except the laws behind the police. For many of them, they carry guns because there are no other economic opportunities in the community. If we can address the trauma in the community, if we can start putting more resources into mental health, and I know this is the same thing everybody says, if we can put more resources in economic development, the business improvement district, it's been shown to work. Safe streets have been shown to work. These things actually work. Making modifications to alcohol policy to reduce the amount or restrict the regulation or restrict the licenses to who they can sell to, how often they can sell, those things work. Back in 1996, when they passed the crime bill, the assault weapons ban that was sunset, it worked. The number of mass shootings went down. It worked. And it's not like we don't know how to do these things. When Peloton a couple weeks ago, a kid got injured on a Peloton, and all of a sudden there was a recall. This is crazy. It works. We know what works. We know that these guns, getting more guns, doesn't make us actually safe. It makes us feel safe. And it also puts us at greater risk. It's like it's like an opioid. It doesn't actually help you, but it makes you feel good. Oh, actually, substance use and mental health are a big reason for gun violence in a lot of the urban areas. But what's more is that substance abuse isn't going anywhere. Neither is mental health. We can do something about the guns. We can. Don't have to get rid of them all. Just regulate them. Hell, remember what it said. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, not individual security. Did you recognize that? It didn't talk about that it is in our individual interest. It is in the interest of maintaining a free state. Remember, this was around the Civil War times and stuff like it doesn't make sense. Fear of money. Well, hell, even the greed is part of fear. You fear of not having enough resources. Having a lot of money is like having a lot of guns. Doesn't actually make you safer. Hell, it makes you a bigger target. But that's what we're accumulating. And if you, when you look at the gun ownership, especially long rifles, are owned primarily by white rich men. So this isn't even, a conversation for the streets. These are the conversations that should be happening, that are benefiting the suites. I gotta be honest, the trauma of it all, because it's it is terror. This is why terrorism works, because I'm not just thinking about my own safety anymore. And even not even just me and mine, but I'm thinking about the interview with the little girl I saw. And she talked about how her teacher got shot and a friend got shot. He shot into the other room, and she took some of her friend's blood and wiped it on her to hide from the gunman. I cannot fathom. Oh, he said that Michael said that in a recent study, 60% of the people who commit murder were on some sort of substance that gave them the courage to kill. And again, this is not necessarily, for me, it's not necessarily the substance that they use. It is the fact that they were ready to kill and they just needed an excuse. And I think, going back down to what was the thing that got them to the mode to kill, not, because what got you comfortable with it, not that. But there was something out there that said, like, hey, I want to kill somebody. What was that thing? Because everything else is about how you facilitated it. Getting the gun, getting the drugs, getting whatever to help you facilitate it. Yes, all of that. Getting the Uber, getting a car to go there. Yes. But what got you to make that first step? What was that? And some of it is fear, because they hear these stories. Like the story of the little girl who covered herself in blood. That's not my story, but it now is part of my psyche. The story about the young man, the young man who had gone, the young couple who had gone to the school that day for the assembly, and their daughter asked to go home with them, and they said no. She died. Like, how do you process that? What do you like? But now that's also part of my story. Yes, absolutely, Michael. 60% of the people in prison have or had a substance use problem. Treatment on demand is absolutely part of the package of solutions that need to be addressed. But again, coming back to, let's get in the community and deal with the actual needs. The gun violence debate is part and parcel of a larger conversation about making our communities safer. And if we make them safer economically, if we make them safer mental health wise, and focus on crime, because we could do more than one thing at a time. We can. And I think we have to, because it's not even about the mass shootings anymore. All of the violence, all of the deterioration of all of our communities. The fact that, hell, I was watching part of the January 6th hearings last night. That was crazy. Like, to watch that again, I wasn't there, but it still affected me. And I think at times that's the goal. Because guess what? They're making money. And they're stoking fear. They're leveraging hate. All of those things are happening. They are scaring the bejesus out of us. And we need to make sure that as part of what we're doing, that we are looking for community level resources that work for those communities, that they can get the support, the mental health support, the counseling support, the direction to resources, so that they can improve the quality of their lives. Because a lot of people don't have hope. And looking around, why should they? The House passed the gun legislation. And I got to be honest, I don't think anything is going to happen with it. The Protecting Our Kids Act. I don't think anything is going to happen because there's too much money involved. We have to take a step back and look at the entire country and realize what we have become. It's kind of like, I have a friend who, whenever she goes to the doctor, she gets on the scale backwards because she doesn't want to see the number. And that's kind of like what we're doing with gun violence. Even the reforms that they're proposing are designed to keep it out of the headlines. Not designed to get rid of the problem. It's designed to make it so that we can live with it more. And I got to be honest, it worked. Until these large mass shootings, gun violence just seemed like, kind of like COVID is now. Like, I'll wear a mask when I'm at risk. I won't go certain places. It was the same kind of thing. But as I started digging into it, I realized that it's not just the mass shootings. It's not just the ones we hear about on TV, because each one of those people is somebody's person. When you hear about people who have suffered gunshot wounds and are unable to walk, suffer gunshot wounds, and their lives are forever altered, having to have multiple surgeries and ridiculous amounts of health coverage or health bills. That is part of what we've just kind of grown to be okay with. That's who we have become. And I think, if nothing else, times like these should shake us out of that. I know it has for me. I'm not numb anymore. I'm hurting. And I should be. People are dying. So what can we do? Well, in your local communities, because I was looking for kind of the large organization that kind of works with through a lot of these issues as far as victim rights go, or victim support, Amnesty International. But make sure that you look through at your local jurisdictions or your local communities. Google can be your best friend, and find resources that may be specific or targeted for your community. There are support groups on Facebook and all of these places, and mental health counseling is a must. As Michael mentioned, as he alluded to, drug use is high among individuals who are involved in gun violence. So make sure that as you are healing from whether you are a direct victim or whether you have, secondary trauma, make sure that you are seeking professional help to navigate through, because self-medication is an option that many of us take, and many of us end up finding ourselves sometimes on the other end of gun violence because of that decision. So yeah, treatment on demand. Talk to your mental health provider, and if that one isn't working for you, not just telling you what you want to hear, but if you are working with that person and you're not feeling safe, if you are not feeling that you're making progress, find somebody different. Because this is about breaking the cycle that got you here. Somebody else didn't get therapy. That might be one of the reasons that the gun ended up in play. But for whatever the reason, you have an opportunity to do better, to do right by yourself, so that you don't end up a statistic, that you can heal from the violence that you have been the victim of. So yeah, reach out to those organizations, reach out to your family if they are safe, because this is, especially when you are feeling these things, it is very important for you to guard what type of energy and what type of messaging that you take in. Make sure you look for facts, because I'm going to tell you what, from my experience, it is easy. It feels so comforting. Just the idea, like I imagine getting a gun, and when I imagined having it, I felt like, and it hit me that that was just the story in my head. And especially as I look at the statistics, as I've lived through this type of thing, as I've had my friends murdered, like that's a real part of my experience. It hurts, and it compromises your decision making. Make sure you get help. Michael said something else. PTSD is a factor. In the last 12 months, 5 people were killed in front and in the street in front of the. Oh wow, I'm sorry, dude. But that is the point. That is the point that I'm making. Thank you for that, Michael. When you live in an environment where people are dying all around you, what do you think is going to happen? You're not me. No. Every time you go out, neck is on the swivel, because it could be my turn this time. Every time you do something, like I said, my friend was literally, she was in her apartment minding her own business, door locked, nobody came in. A bullet came through and her wall, her couch, and her arm, and into the other wall. Like, had she been sitting on the couch, I'd be talking to you all about her funeral. divine intervention being what it is, I am exceptionally grateful. But a few seconds either way, or a few minutes or something, could have changed everything. Don't even know who the shooter was. She wasn't even a target. Random shot. Could have been somebody accident. A gun just went off. Could have been somebody she knows in another apartment somewhere. So many things that could have been. It's one of the reasons that we need to do something. Not could have done something, not should have done something. We need to actually do something. If you haven't reached out to your elected official to have them prioritize the Protecting Our Kids Act, it is the least that Congress can do. Call them. And also go through and look at who is supporting the senators and the congressmen and the people who are against this, and reach out to them, because this needs to change. We've been polite for way too long. All right, it's been another draining episode, you guys. But I am so grateful for you all for joining me on this journey, because I think it's important. Not just for me, but to know that we're not alone as individuals trying to navigate this space. This is collective. And oh, thanks. Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate you. And thanks for the comment. I appreciate the engagement. And I really do appreciate you guys for making this palatable. We'll be black on Monday.